Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! The din of machinery abruptly ceased as the factory bell pierced through the air, marking the shift's conclusion. Exhausted, Henry swept away perspiration, his roughened hands a contrast to his fair complexion. Half a decade had passed since he began this relentless toil, an eternity on the assembly line that left its mark on body and mind. Glancing at the gleaming metallic surface of a press, he saw his image. Unruly golden locks surrounded a visage aged beyond its years.
"Tomorrow! Don't be late!"
The foreman's voice boomed across the emptying factory floor. With a pained grin, Henry muttered,
Be here sooner than I'd like."
Step by step, he trudged home, passing identical dwellings, a never-ending procession, each residence indistinguishable from the next. He lived alone in one of these cookie-cutter dwellings, a place that never quite felt like home. As he unlocked his front door, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Inside, he went through his usual routine: shower, microwave dinner, television. But as he sat on his worn couch, he found himself staring at his hands. They were strong, capable hands, perfect for the work he did. Yet he couldn't help but wonder what they'd look like if they were different. Sleep came fitfully that night, dreams filled with hazy images he couldn't quite grasp. When his alarm blared the next morning, Henry felt as if he'd barely closed his eyes. He dragged himself out of bed, pulled on his usual blue work shirt and jeans, and headed back to the factory. As he approached his station, he froze. Someone was already there, working his machine with practiced ease. Someone with long, blonde hair cascading down their back.
"Excuse me,"
Henry said, his voice hesitant. "I think you're at my station." The person turned, and Henry's world tilted on its axis. He was looking at himself, but not quite. The face that stared back at him was softer, more delicate. The eyes were the same shade of green, but framed by long lashes. It was as if someone had taken Henry and shifted him. "Oh, I'm so sorry!" the woman exclaimed, her voice a higher pitch, but with familiar inflections. "I'm Hannah. I just started today, and they must have put me at the wrong station." Henry blinked, unable to form words. Hannah. It was even close to his own name. "Are you all right?" Hannah asked, concern etching her features that were so eerily similar to his own.
Yeah,"
Henry managed. "I'm Henry. This is usually my station." Hannah's eyes widened. "Oh, you must be who I'm replacing. They told me the person on this shift was transferring to nights." Henry frowned. "That's news to me. I haven't requested any changes." A look of confusion passed over Hannah's face, mirroring Henry's own bewilderment. "That's strange. Maybe there's been a mix-up in HR? Should we go talk to the supervisor?" Henry nodded, still trying to process the situation. As they walked towards the supervisor's office, he couldn't help but steal glances at Hannah. The resemblance was uncanny, yet there was something about her that seemed right. The way she moved, the confidence in her stride. It was as if she was everything Henry had ever wanted to be. The supervisor, a portly man named Frank, looked up as they entered his office. His eyebrows shot up in surprise.
"Well, I'll be damned. You two could be twins."
Henry cleared his throat.
"There seems to be some confusion about the shift assignments. I wasn't aware I was being moved to nights."
Frank frowned, rifling through some papers on his desk.
That's odd. I've got the transfer request right here, signed by you, Henry.
Henry leaned forward, examining the document. The signature at the bottom did look like his, but he had no memory of signing it. I don't remember doing this. Hannah spoke up, her voice soft but firm. Is there any way we could both work the day shift? At least until this is sorted out? Frank scratched his chin, considering.
Well, we are short-handed. I suppose we could use you both for now. Why don't you two work together today, and we'll figure this out by tomorrow?
Henry and Hannah nodded in agreement, though Henry's mind was reeling. As they walked back to the workstation, Hannah touched his arm gently. Are you sure you're okay? You look like you've seen a ghost.
I feel like I have,
Henry admitted. It's just, you look so much like me. It's uncanny. Hannah smiled, a warm expression that transformed her face. I was thinking the same thing. It's like looking in a mirror, only different. As they worked side by side, Henry found himself constantly distracted. Hannah moved with a grace he'd never possessed, her hands deftly manipulating the machinery. She chatted easily with their coworkers, her laughter ringing out over the din of the factory floor. Henry felt a strange mixture of envy and admiration. During their lunch break, they sat together in the canteen, both picking at sandwiches from the vending machine. Hannah leaned in, her voice low. Can I ask you something, Henry? He nodded, curious. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be someone else, to live a completely different life? The question hit Henry like a thunderbolt. Of course he had. Every day, in fact, but he'd never dared to voice those thoughts aloud. Yeah, I have. Hannah's eyes lit up. Me too. All the time. And now, meeting you. It's like seeing a glimpse of what could have been. Henry felt a lump form in his throat. What do you mean? Hannah glanced around, making sure no one was listening. What if we traded places? Just for a day or two, to see what it's like. The idea was absurd, impossible, yet Henry found himself nodding. How would we even do that? Hannah grinned, a mischievous glint in her eye. Meet me after work. I have an idea. The rest of the shift crawled by, Henry's mind racing with possibilities. When the whistle blew, he found Hannah waiting for him by the exit. She led him to a small coffee shop a few blocks from the factory. Over steaming mugs of coffee, Hannah laid out her plan. We're so similar, I bet we could pass for each other with just a few changes. I have some clothes that would fit you, and I'm sure you have some I could borrow. We could switch apartments for a couple of days, see what it's like to live each other's lives. Henry's heart raced at the thought. To be Hannah, even for a day, it was everything he'd ever dreamed of, but never allowed himself to consider. What about work? Won't people notice? Hannah shrugged. We'll say we decided to switch shifts after all. Frank seemed confused enough that he probably won't question it. It was crazy, reckless, but Henry found himself agreeing. They exchanged keys and addresses, agreeing to meet at Hannah's apartment the next morning to prepare for the switch. That night, Henry barely slept. His mind was filled with images of himself, of Hannah, moving through the world with ease and confidence. When his alarm went off, he was already wide awake. Hannah's apartment was small but cozy, filled with plants and colorful artwork. She greeted him with a warm smile, ushering him inside. Are you ready for this? Henry nodded, his stomach a knot of nerves and excitement. Hannah led him to her bedroom, where she'd laid out an outfit on the bed, a simple blue dress and a pair of low heels. "I'll give you some privacy to change," Hannah said, slipping out of the room. "Let me know if you need any help." Henry stared at the clothes, his hands shaking slightly as he reached for them. The fabric of the dress was soft against his skin as he pulled it on. He fumbled with the zipper for a moment before managing to do it up. The heels were a challenge, but he found his balance after a few wobbly steps. When he looked in the mirror, his breath caught in his throat. The person staring back at him was right. For the first time in his life, Henry felt like he was seeing his true self. Hannah knocked softly on the door. "How's it going in there?" I think I'm ready," Henry called back, his voice trembling slightly. Hannah entered, her eyes widening as she took in the sight of Henry in her clothes. "Wow, you look amazing." Henry felt a blush creep up his cheeks. "Really?" Hannah nodded, moving to stand beside him in the mirror. "It's like you were meant to wear that dress. Now let's do something about your hair." Over the next hour, Hannah worked her magic. She showed Henry how to style his hair, apply makeup, even how to modulate his voice to sound more feminine. By the time she was finished, the transformation was complete. "What do you think?" Hannah asked, stepping back to admire her handiwork. Henry stared at his reflection, barely recognizing himself. The person in the mirror was beautiful, confident, everything he'd ever wanted to be. I don't know what to say." Hannah squeezed his shoulder gently. "You don't have to say anything. I can see it in your eyes. This is who you were always meant to be, isn't it?" Henry nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. "I never thought. I never allowed myself to even consider." "It's okay," Hannah said softly. "This is your chance to explore, to be who you truly are. Embrace it." They spent the rest of the morning going over details. Hannah's daily routine, her friends, anything Henry might need to know to convincingly play her part. As they prepared to leave for work, Hannah handed Henry her ID badge. "Remember, you're Hannah now, and I'm Henry. We can do this." The walk to the factory was surreal. Henry felt exposed, vulnerable, yet strangely exhilarated. Every step in the heels was a challenge, but also a thrill. He caught his reflection in shop windows, marveling at the way the dress swayed as he moved. At the factory, Frank did a double take as they walked in.
"Well, I see you two sorted out the shift situation."
Hannah, now dressed in Henry's clothes, nodded. "Yes, sir. We decided to switch after all." Frank shrugged. "All right then. Get to work, you two." As Henry settled in at Hannah's workstation, he felt a sense of liberation wash over him. For the first time in his life, he felt right. The machine that had always felt like a prison now seemed almost like an old friend. He worked with a newfound enthusiasm, chatting easily with co-workers who had no idea of the profound change he was experiencing. During lunch, he sat with a group of women he recognized as Hannah's friends. They gossiped and laughed, including him as if he'd always been part of their circle. Henry found himself joining in, his laughter genuine and unforced. As the day wore on, Henry settled more and more into his role as Hannah. The initial awkwardness faded, replaced by a sense of comfort and belonging. When the shift ended, he found himself reluctant to leave. Hannah was waiting for him outside, a knowing smile on her face. "How was it?" Henry couldn't contain his excitement. It was incredible. I've never felt so me. They walked back to Hannah's apartment, Henry recounting every detail of his day. As they reached the door, Hannah turned to him, her expression serious. Henry, or should I say, Hannah. I think we both know this isn't just a game or an experiment anymore, don't we? Henry nodded, a lump forming in his throat. I don't want to go back. I can't go back. Hannah pulled him into a hug. Then don't. This is who you are, who you were always meant to be. Embrace it. Over the next few weeks, Henry, now living full-time as Hannah, began the process of transition. Hannah was there every step of the way, offering support, advice, and a shoulder to cry on when things got tough. There were challenges, of course, telling his family, navigating the complex world of gender identity, dealing with the occasional confused or hostile reaction. But through it all, Henry, who now went by Haley, felt a sense of rightness that had been missing his entire life. 6 months later, Haley stood in front of the mirror in her apartment, the same apartment that had once belonged to Hannah. She smoothed down the front of her blue dress, marveling at how natural it felt now. Her blonde hair, longer now, framed a face that was softer, more feminine, yet still recognizably her own. A knock at the door pulled her from her reverie. She opened it to find Hannah standing there, grinning broadly. Ready for your first day back at work as the real you? Haley nodded, taking a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be. As they walked to the factory, Haley couldn't help but reflect on the strange twist of fate that had brought them together. Hannah, her doppelganger, her catalyst for change, had become her closest friend and confidant. At the factory gates, Hannah gave her hand a squeeze. You've got this. Just be yourself. Haley smiled, feeling a surge of confidence. That's all I want to be. As she walked onto the factory floor, head held high, Haley felt the stares and whispers. But for once, they didn't bother her. This was who she was, who she had always been meant to be. And as she took her place at her workstation, she knew that the journey of self-discovery that had begun with a chance encounter was far from over. But for the first time in her life, she was excited to see where it would lead. The familiar hum of the machinery filled the air as Haley settled into her work routine. Her hands moved with practiced ease, muscle memory kicking in despite the months away. Yet everything felt different now, brighter, more vivid, as if she was experiencing it all for the first time. Throughout the day, co-workers approached her, some curious, others supportive. Haley answered their questions patiently, her confidence growing with each interaction. She was surprised to find that most people were genuinely happy for her, congratulating her on finding the courage to be her true self. During the lunch break, Haley sat with Hannah and a group of their coworkers. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and friendly banter. As Haley looked around the table, she realized that for the first time in her life, she felt like she truly belonged. So, Haley, one of her coworkers, a kind-faced woman named Ellen, began. How does it feel to be back? Haley smiled, her eyes bright. It feels right, like I'm finally where I'm supposed to be. Ellen reached across the table, squeezing Haley's hand. We're glad to have you back, and I have to say, that blue dress looks fantastic on you. Haley felt a warmth spread through her chest. Thank you. It's my favorite. As the day wore on, Haley found herself settling into a new rhythm. The work was the same, but her approach to it had changed. She moved with a grace and confidence that had always eluded her before, her actions fluid and purposeful. When the end-of-shift whistle blew, Haley felt a mix of relief and reluctance. Part of her didn't want the day to end, afraid that the sense of rightness might somehow slip away. But as she clocked out and headed for the exit, Hannah fell into step beside her. "So, how was your first day back?" Hannah asked, linking her arm through Haley's. Haley couldn't contain her smile. "It was amazing. Better than I could have ever imagined." They walked in companionable silence for a while, the setting sun casting long shadows across the street. Finally, Hannah spoke again, her voice soft. "You know, when I first saw you that day at the factory, I had no idea how much our lives were about to change." Haley nodded, remembering the confusion and fear she'd felt in that moment. "I thought I was losing my mind, but really, I was finding myself." As they approached Haley's apartment building, Hannah turned to face her. "I'm so proud of you, Haley. You've come so far." Haley felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you. You showed me that it was possible to be me." Hannah pulled her into a tight hug. "You did all the hard work. I just opened the door." As they parted, Haley felt a surge of gratitude for this woman who had become so much more than a friend. "Do you want to come up for a while? We could order takeout, maybe watch a movie?" Hannah grinned. "Sounds perfect." Up in Haley's apartment, they kicked off their shoes and settled onto the couch. As Hannah called in their usual order from the local Chinese restaurant, Haley found herself staring at her reflection in the darkened TV screen. The woman looking back at her was happy, confident, at peace with herself. It was still sometimes hard to believe that this was her life now. "Earth to Haley." Hannah's voice broke through her reverie. "What movie do you want to watch?" Haley blinked, coming back to the present. "Oh, how about something light? A comedy, maybe?" As they scrolled through options, laughing and debating the merits of various films, Haley felt a deep sense of contentment wash over her. This was what she had always wanted, to be herself, to have genuine connections with people who saw and accepted her for who she truly was. The doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of their food. As they dug into cartons of lo mein and kung pao chicken, Haley found herself opening up about her day. "You know, there was a moment today when I was working, and I suddenly realized that I wasn't thinking about how I looked, or how I was moving, or if my voice sounded right. I was just being. It was incredible." Hannah nodded, understanding in her eyes. That's what authenticity feels like, when you're no longer performing, but just existing as your true self. Haley pondered this for a moment. "I never realized how exhausting it was, always trying to fit into a role that wasn't meant for me. Now, even when things are challenging, I feel lighter." As the night wore on, their conversation drifted to plans for the future. Haley spoke of her desire to become an advocate for other transgender individuals, to help create the kind of supportive environment that had allowed her to flourish. "You'd be amazing at that," Hannah encouraged. "You have such a unique perspective, and you're living proof that it's never too late to become who you're meant to be." Haley felt a warmth spread through her chest at Hannah's words. "I couldn't have done any of this without you, you know. You've been my rock through all of this." Hannah reached out, squeezing Haley's hand. "And I always will be. We're in this together, remember?" As the credits of the movie rolled, Haley found herself yawning. The emotional and physical toll of the day was finally catching up with her. Hannah noticed and stood up, gathering their empty food containers. "I should head out and let you get some rest. Big day tomorrow, after all." Haley walked Hannah to the door, enveloping her in a tight hug before she left. "Thank you for everything." After Hannah left, Haley went through her nightly routine, removing her makeup, moisturizing, brushing out her hair. As she looked at herself in the bathroom mirror, she couldn't help but smile. The person looking back at her was finally, truly herself. She climbed into bed, her body tired, but her mind still buzzing with the events of the day. As she drifted off to sleep, Haley felt a sense of excitement for what the future held. She knew there would be challenges ahead, but for the first time in her life, she felt equipped to face them. The next morning, Haley woke up before her alarm, feeling refreshed and eager to start the day. She went through her morning routine with a sense of joy, each act of self-care a celebration of her identity. As she zipped up her blue dress, the same one she had worn on her first day as Hannah, she felt a surge of confidence. At the factory, Haley threw herself into her work with renewed vigor. She found herself noticing things she had never paid attention to before. The way the morning light filtered through the high windows, the rhythm of the machines working in tandem, the camaraderie among her coworkers. Everything seemed more vibrant, more alive. During her lunch break, Haley found herself deep in conversation with a younger coworker named Rachel. The girl seemed nervous, fidgeting with her sandwich as she spoke. "Haley, can I ask you something? Personal?" Haley nodded encouragingly. "Of course. What's on your mind?" Rachel took a deep breath. "How did you know that you were meant to be a woman, I mean?" Haley felt a surge of empathy for the young woman. She recognized the mixture of fear and hope in Rachel's eyes. It was the same look she had seen in her own reflection countless times. "It wasn't any one moment," Haley began, choosing her words carefully. "It was more like a lifetime of moments, of feeling out of place in my own skin, of looking in the mirror and not recognizing the person staring back at me. And then, when I finally allowed myself to explore who I truly was, everything just clicked." Rachel nodded, her eyes wide. I think I might be going through something similar, but I'm scared. How did you find the courage to make such a big change?" Haley reached out, placing a comforting hand on Rachel's arm. "The courage comes from realizing that living authentically is worth any challenge you might face. And you don't have to do it alone. There are people who will support you, who will stand by you every step of the way." As Rachel wiped away a tear, Haley felt a sense of purpose wash over her. This was why she had gone through her journey, not just for herself, but to be able to help others who were struggling with their own identities. The rest of the day passed in a blur of productivity and meaningful conversations. By the time the end-of-shift whistle blew, Haley felt a deep sense of satisfaction. As she walked out of the factory gates, she spotted Hannah waiting for her. "How was day 2? Hannah asked, falling into step beside her. Haley couldn't contain her smile. "It was transformative, in more ways than one." As they walked, Haley recounted her conversation with Rachel, the sense of purpose she had felt in being able to offer guidance and support. Hannah listened intently, a proud smile on her face. "You're going to change lives, Haley. You already have." As they reached Haley's apartment building, Hannah surprised her by pulling her into a tight hug. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "You've come so far, and you're only just beginning." Haley felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. "Thank you for being by my side through all of this. I couldn't have done it without you." As they parted, Hannah gave Haley's hand a final squeeze. "This is just the start of your journey, Haley, and I can't wait to see where it takes you." Watching Hannah walk away, Haley felt a sense of excitement for what the future held. She had found her true self, her purpose, and a friend who had become family. As she climbed the stairs to her apartment, Haley knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready to face them as her authentic, complete self.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!